Hey there, it's Dr. Sarah Andreas. Welcome back. Today we're going to talk about one of the chapters in my new book. I think I've told you guys this that I'm writing a book. Well, I wrote one book and then I sent it off to someone and she reads it and gives me feedback and stuff like that. And she sent me back this feedback, and when I read through her feedback, what I discovered was it's actually not one book, it's three books. So I tore it apart and I rewrote what is now the book that's almost done. So I'm super excited about that. And it's a book about if we wish, as women, if we make a wish and we think, I wish there were more women in leadership, then that's our calling to become that woman. And as I was writing the book, one of the chapters I wrote about, and I thought I'd share that with you today, is a chapter on barriers and traps that we can get caught in as we're trying to develop our leadership. So I thought I would just kind of talk about the four traps that I've identified and see if there are any that resonate with you, or if you've identified a trap that is different from the ones that I've identified. So these are traps that I found myself in when I was trying to really work on my leadership and really become a better leader. So the first trap is the trap of gathering. So I didn't even realize that I was in this trap until one of my mentors once told me that he wished I would stop reading so many books. And I couldn't figure out why until he said, well, there's this problem when you're just reading all the time, but you're not doing anything with it. And at the time I blew off that comment because I'm a very big gatherer. And that's the first trap. It's a gathering trap. So we gather information. We think we have to have more information, more information. We read a ton of books. We talk to a lot of people, but we never put our stuff into practice. So for me, that was one of my biggest traps. Then I think the reaction of, hey, all I've ever done is gathered information. I'm going to just take action now. I'm not going to get any more information. I'm just going to take action. And I think that swing of the pendulum can put us into a trap of doing. And we can go out and we can just start plugging away and doing all this stuff, but we never pause to ask experts, ask people who've been further ahead of us about how they did it, about what they experienced. And because we're so busy doing and we're so busy being busy, we miss our opportunities to really make an impact. And if we could just pause our doing and gather information, gather feedback, make sure that we're on the right track and that we're making an impact, we'd be so much better off. So that's the second trap. The third trap is the trap of comparing. And I think that this one is actually, all of them are kind of this way. There's a positive and a negative to it. So in the comparing trap, though, it's where that you're always looking at somebody who's further ahead of you, who is better than you in your perception, someone who is doing something that you would really like to do, and you compare yourself to that person. Now, here's where the trap gets tricky. If you compare yourself to that person and then give up because you're like, oh, I'm never going to be as good as so-and-so, or, oh, I'm never going to be as articulate or as grounded as that person is, so I just give up and I'm not going to even try. That's the negative piece of it. But if you compare yourself to someone and you're like, hey, they're further in the journey than me, and if I do those same steps, I can get myself to that level, then I think the comparing doesn't become a trap for us. It just becomes our way of getting to our next level. You just have to be careful because it's so easy to get sucked in and decide, hey, they're better than me, so I'm not even going to try. And the last trap that I identified, and this is actually one that I experienced quite often when I was trying to develop in leadership, and that was the judgment trap. And it was the trap of, I'm not good enough, so I'm not going to continue to try. And we can be so hard on ourselves and so mean when we're talking to ourselves internally. And maybe we're not even consciously aware of how we're talking to ourselves. But because we put those judgments on ourselves, we can never get past that feeling of not being good enough because we're constantly reinforcing it inside of ourselves in our mental state. So the thing that you really need to pay attention to, if you even think that you might be in this judgment trap, is how are you talking to yourself? If you said the words out loud that you're currently saying in your head, would somebody else be appalled? Would you ever say the words that you're talking to yourself to other people who are in your life? And if the answer is no, then why in the heck are you saying it to yourself? We can be our biggest advocates, our biggest cheerleaders, our biggest push, or we can be the biggest rock that's holding ourselves back. So each of these traps are an opportunity for us to identify the trap and figure out, how do we get over this? Hey, I'm stuck in this trap. What's my next move? If you're stuck in the gathering trap, your next move is to take action. So if you're reading 52 books a year or 100 books a year, then your solution is read a book, take a piece of it, and put it into action. And get yourself in the habit. If I'm going to read, I'm going to take something out of it, I'm going to put it into action. Or if I'm going to listen to a bunch of podcasts, I'm going to take a piece out of it and put it into action. If you're stuck in the doing trap, then what you want to do is you want to pause when you're doing and make sure that you're actually being productive, that you're making a difference, that you're not just being busy to be busy. The 80-20 rule. 20% of our efforts produce 80% of our results. So make sure that you're truly putting your good effort into that 20% and not wasting a bunch of time in the 80%. The comparing loop or trap, if you're stuck in that, you want to ask yourself questions about, hey, when I compare myself to that leader who's way out there, am I doing it to inspire myself to go to the next level? Or am I doing it as a way to hold myself back because I don't think I'll ever catch up? And then the judgment loop is, I always recommend just simply ask yourself, if I said this out loud, would I say it to somebody else and how would they feel? And if you said it out loud and you said, oh my gosh, if I said that out loud to somebody else, they would feel horrible, then stop saying it to yourself. Change the words that you say. The way I did it was whenever I would catch myself saying something, I would correct myself. And I usually corrected myself out loud if I wasn't in a room full of other people. And that really seemed to help. All right, you guys, have a wonderful, I know it's getting close to the weekend, so have a wonderful weekend and I'll talk to you next week.